Fabio Wardley gets comprehensively outboxed, dominated, and almost stopped by Justis Huni before he pulls out an absolutely enormous right hand to ice Justis Huni in the 10th round of their fight. This is my instant reaction video to the contest. I hope you all enjoy this one. Stick with me till the end because these are my instant thoughts on the fight, which was highly, highly entertaining. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to A Guy Called Henry. Guys, this is what Fabio Wardley does. This is what I said would happen before the fight. But don't worry, I'm going to be giving Justis Huni plenty of credit too, because he boxed very, very well. And it was just the unfortunate reality of what was in there at the end of the day. Now, there are questions to be answered. There's debates to be had. There's questions to be answered like, can Fabio Wardley continue on in his career like this, taking so many punches? Was Fabio Wardley lucky to land that right hand and knock out Justis Huni? Can Huni feel a little bit hard done by given, he was given a count, he got up on 5, and yet he was waved off immediately? These are all things I'm going to be getting into in this video. Just before I jump in, guys, please do bang a like on this video if you like it. Subscribe to A Guy Called Henry if you're new. And get your comment in the comment section below. What did you make of this fight? Now, to begin, before the fight, I obviously made my prediction video. It was actually a pretty popular prediction video. I think like 14,000 odd of you watched it. And I said that I felt that Justis Huni was the better boxer, the raw talent, and I felt that he would potentially be outboxing Fabio Wardley for large patches of this fight. And he was. And the bit that I didn't quite foresee was just how badly he was going to outbox Fabio Wardley. I'm going to pull up my scorecard for you right now that I had in my live stream. And you can see that through 9 rounds, I gave every single round to Justis Huni. There was one round in there that I think was probably a bit of a swing round. That I think it was maybe round 3 you could have potentially given to Fabio Wardley. Other than that, though, it was all Justis Huni. And Justis Huni was absolutely brilliant. Tactically, technically, he absolutely nailed it in this fight. Wardley was finding it almost impossible to time Huni, who was just so quick in and out with his feet. And in terms of the way that Wardley defends, Huni was predicting him really well. And I said before the fight that Fabio Wardley's biggest problem is he basically doesn't have a guard. Like, as much as his hands are up, they block nothing. And you saw in the fight, Huni just more and more, as the rounds went on, walking Fabio Wardley down. And whilst I said before the fight, and I think this is probably Huni's biggest problem, is that I don't think he's a very big puncher. He's not a massive puncher, and so he has to throw in combinations. The fight he actually kind of reminds me of is Chris Eubank Jr. in the way that if you think about Eubank Jr., I think Huni's a much slicker boxer than Eubank Jr., but if you think about the way that Eubank Jr. kind of lacks that single shot power, so he always throws in combinations, I think it's something very similar with Justis Huni, where to get your respect, he's got to land multiple shots. But landed so many counter right hands over the top. Every time Fabio Wardley dipped down to his right to dodge shots, Huni would whip in this left hook. And the thing that really impressed me about Huni was how good his defense was. Every time Wardley tried to wing in a wild right hand, Huni would just dip under it. Huni was so good at measuring the range, measuring the distance, making Wardley fall short, constantly getting his head off the line and making Wardley miss with his jab. And it meant that Wardley really struggled to establish the range for himself. All he could really muster was a few body jabs. Couple of shots to the head through 9 rounds, but barely anything was landing for Fabio Wardley. But the issue with Huni that I felt before the fight was, despite his technical brilliance, despite the fact he's got these really fast hands, these great feet, I felt that at some point Wardley would land. And I felt that based on what I'd seen, based on the rumors I'd heard about him, that his chin would not hold up when Wardley did land. The thing with Fabio Wardley is, because he is such a warrior, because of the way he fights, he's willing to put himself in harm's way. I said this time and time again in the build-up to the fight. He will be in the pocket and he will let you hit him to land his own shots. Now, Huni, I think, was probably a bit faster than he anticipated. I think Huni's combinations were better than he anticipated. Another thing Huni was doing really well was he was banging to Wardley's chest, moving at an angle, and firing his left hook in or his right hand, and was getting absolutely dominated. He was getting absolutely dominated. He lost every single round. As I say, Huni landed so many shots. If you were an onlooker watching this, you didn't know anything about the two men, you'd say, wow, Huni was really, really unlucky. But I actually just think that this was always the way it was going to go. And I think, look, there's every chance that Wardley doesn't land that right hand, but I also think it's not a lucky right hand because the way that Wardley sets it up is great. Huni throws his right hand. He's a little square when he does it, though. And Wardley throws at the exact same time and gets his head off the line. And he cracks him right on the chin. I mean, it was a beautiful right hand. And, if Huni had Wardley's power, think about what a prospect he'd be. And even though he's the better boxer, even though he is the better talent, the raw talent, Wardley has that thing that you just can't teach, which is raw punching power and toughness and determination. And if you took Wardley's chin and you took Wardley's punch power and you put it on Justis Huni, you might have the perfect boxer. You might have the perfect heavyweight boxer. Now, there's a couple things to discuss looking ahead. I think that Fabio Wardley, I said before the fight, I was absolutely sure at a certain point in time he's going to get knocked out because I just don't think you can get hit as much as he does at heavyweight world championship level boxing and continue to win. And you saw how much he got hit tonight. And I worry about his health getting hit that much. Oftentimes the injuries we've seen in the ring, they're rarely from single punch knockouts. It's usually from an accumulation of damage and accumulation of shots. We saw Eubank Jr. with Nick Blackwell. We saw Eubank Sr. with Michael Watson, although that was one shot really that kind of turned it, but he'd been hitting him throughout the fight. But often, yeah, it's an accumulation of punches. It's a build-up of punishment. And I don't want to see Fabio Wardley getting hit like that again. Like, that is too much. He can't continue to have wars like that. It's simple, but I also just think that his ceiling it's low. I don't think he can go all the way to be a world champion, because I just think he is going to get found out. He does have that right-hand equalizer, but equally, if most of the top 10 hit him as much as Justis Huni did tonight, he's going to be in real trouble. At the same time, Justis Huni's got probably better boxing skills than most of the top 10. His hand speed's great. His boxing IQ is very, very good. His feet are excellent. So there's an argument to be had that Wardley won't get hit that much by other guys, but he's not been in there with many punches. I don't think Fraser Clarke is a particularly big punching heavyweight. I definitely, at this point, I'm sure that Justis Huni isn't. So, the moment you put him in there with someone who can really punch, I think Fabio Wardley's going to be in trouble. And just as a general note, he just can't be taking this many shots. He's got to work on his defense. He's got to get better at foot feints, I feel. I think he needs to get better at controlling the range. Ben Davison was getting frustrated with him in the corner because he said, you're jabbing in lulls. You can't jab in lulls. And I thought that was very smart, because in the lulls, Huni was looking for Wardley to throw. He would then move his head, get off the line, and then he'd start coming forward with combination punches, because Wardley's feet are not amazing. And as I said, if you're Huni in this fight, what you'd want to do is stay on the outside, stay on the back foot, let Wardley throw, let him overreach, then counter. And so many times, Huni just made him miss and made him pay. It was really nice counter-punching boxing using those fast hands. And as Davison said to Wardley, you can't throw in a lull, and it's because Huni will make you miss. But if you throw off feints, if you disturb Huni's rhythm, then things can be great for you. And I think that Wardley will probably learn quite a bit from this fight, but at the same time, it does show his limitations as a boxer. There is a ceiling for him. At the end of the day, he's always got a chance. He's always in with a puncher's chance in any fight. But I do think the matchmaking's been very good too. I have to say that, yeah, Fraser Clarke 1 was a brutal war, absolutely brutal war. Probably I had Fraser edging it on points, but I can't really argue with a draw either. The Huni fight, Huni has absolutely schooled him here for most of the fight. Gone through these 9 rounds, he got through. Absolutely schooling him, outpointing him, dominating him. There was points where I even thought, will they pull Fabio Wardley out here because he's getting hit so much? But he showed you why you don't do that, because he did land that shot and he eventually timed it perfectly. And as I said before the fight, I just don't think you can get through 12 rounds with Fabio Wardley without him landing that one punch. And then it comes down to how tough are you, how good's your chin? And I suspected Justis Huni's wasn't good enough. And that's what we saw tonight. Now, the point of contention really from this one was just the count at the end there. And I sort of felt initially, I needed to see it again. And straight away, my reaction was, no, I think that's okay. I think, he got really heavily knocked down, Huni. It was a massive right hand. And, he did take it clean. He did go down on his back. But the reality is he was up on 5. And I need to check it again, but everyone in the comments was saying he was up on 5. And the referee had a look at him and waved it off. Now, the argument is that there's 2 schools of thought here. One is that he deserves to keep going and keep trying to win, because he was so far up on points. He was so far ahead that you'd argue that, if he can just survive the rest of the round and get through the next 2, he's going to win. So it's hard done by in that sense. But the other side of it is the referee's looked at him. He's decided that he's too hurt to continue. And the problem is, if you think he's too hurt to continue and you let him continue, Wardley is a serious puncher and he could have gone in there and really hurt him. But I'm probably more in the school of thought that you give him the chance to continue if he wants to. And his corner didn't pull him out. And he was on his feet. Yeah, I think it probably was a little bit of a premature finish. But equally, I don't have a problem with it per se, because it was a massive knockdown. I think being that far ahead on the cards, being as fresh as Huni was, having barely taken any punishment in the fight to that point, I do think he was a little bit hard done by to get stopped there. But equally, there's nothing to say that Wardley wouldn't have instantly gone and stopped him anyway. Huni was certainly not complaining afterwards. He seems like an absolute gentleman, an absolute warrior, and a credit to the sport, a credit to his countrymen. He's come in there, he's boxed really well. You could have felt really hard done by, but he said he just said fair play to Wardley. He's a great fighter. Thank you to Ipswich for having me. And he's looking forward to having more opportunities. And I hope that Justis Huni does get more opportunities. But looking ahead for Justis Huni, because I'll do that now. I'll look ahead for both men. Looking ahead for Justis Huni, first of all, he really needs to work on his power. And I don't know if it's possible. I don't know if it's possible at this point in his career to increase that punching power. But he had about as static a target as you could hope from Fabio Wardley. He hit him with so many shots. As I say, Wardley's guard, non-existent. So easy for him to land on him. If he's not going to knock out Fabio Wardley, who I do think is extremely tough, but if he's not going to knock out Fabio Wardley in those conditions, I don't see how he'd ever knock him out. He landed so many shots on him. So Justis Huni has got to work out how he can hurt people more with single punches. That's the first thing. And it might just be a case of, he needs to just sit on his shots a bit more, because he does move his feet a lot. But he winds his shots up so much, he really slings them in, but there's just nothing on them. Maybe he should be a bit heavier. I don't know. But then you nullify his best attributes. So it's a really difficult one. And you've seen Huni's ceiling there as a heavyweight boxer. The fact is, that's the one division you can't really be in where you're relying on winning on points, because you're always going to be in there with a guy who can hurt you with one shot. So Justis Huni, like I said it in my pre-fight video, in my prediction video, I said he has to be close to perfect for 12 rounds. And he wasn't. And he was close, though. He was very close to being perfect. But if you're not perfect, against a guy like Fabio Wardley, he's going to knock you out. That's what happened. So where next for Huni? I'm not too sure. You need to bring him back against someone who, you know, isn't the biggest puncher probably. Maybe a Jarrell Miller would be good for Justis Huni. You know, he's someone who comes forward constantly, all fight, got a great engine. It would probably be an absolute war, but Miller's not a massive one-punch knockout artist. He's not got massive single shots. Maybe a Jared Anderson. I think there's some really good guys actually in the top 15 that Huni can mix it with. And I actually think he's a great addition to the division. He offers something a bit different. He's a different style, and he's great. He's a great boxer. So fair play to Huni. Well done to Huni, and commiserations, because, you know, it is a bit unlucky in the sense of maybe he could have avoided that right hand. Maybe he could have been a bit less ambitious with his work in the final few rounds of the fight. Why next for Fabio Wardley? Well, I thought that Fabio Wardley got way worse beaten in the rounds he was losing than I thought he would tonight. I knew he was going to be losing on points, but it was bad. I mean, it was really, really bad. And, you know, at the end of the day, he's won the fight by knockout, and I give him all the credit in the world for that. And it was what I thought would happen. I didn't think he'd take as much punishment as he did on the way to that win. So for Fabio Wardley, the key thing here is he's got to work on his defense moving forward. He can't be eating that many shots, even if it's just having a better guard. You know, when you're moving backwards, just if you're in a zone where you know right now Huni's in his flow, I can't quite time him yet. Just get your hands up. At least offer some defensive variation so that Huni doesn't know if you're going to drop your hands and throw a pull counter, if you're going to get your head off to the side and throw that shot, if you're going to have your guard up. At least make him apprehensive about what you're going to do defensively. So I think he needs to offer more defensive variety. I think his feint game needs serious work. But, you know, it's difficult when you've got a guy in there whose feet are just that much faster than you. Your own feints don't matter as much because you're worried about when he's coming in on you. So it's really hard. But where does he go next? I don't think he's going to be able to be a world champion with the guys that are currently world champions. You know, you've got Daniel Dubois, Alexander Usyk. That doesn't seem realistic for me. So I think for Fabio Wardley, it's about picking the right fights. It's about picking fun fights. And then maybe giving him a go at some point. But I think for him, it'll be about finding the right payday at the end of the day. I'd be very careful about putting him in there with a proper world champion. You know, his best win now is Justis Huni. I think Justis Huni showed he's a better boxer than Fraser Clark. But equally, has Wardley been in there with someone who could knock him out? Like, really knock him out with, like, you know, real heavyweight power? I'd say no. And so I'm thinking about who's on the heavyweight scene right now. I think a Joe Joyce could be an interesting fight for him. I think that a Derek Chisora could be an interesting fight for Fabio Wardley, although Chisora could well knock him out. But maybe that's a fight Chisora would want, especially now it looks like Dylan White's going to be fighting Moses Tamil, which I'm going to have to talk about in another video. But yeah, there's some interesting options for him. Maybe a Hrgovic. There are some interesting options for Fabio Wardley, who I don't think are the biggest punchers ever, and that I think he could take it to. So Wardley's got options. Wardley's got variety. If I had to pick one of them, I actually think Hrgovic makes a bit of sense. I think Hrgovic, again, it would be similar. Hrgovic should be outboxing him, but I think Hrgovic is more hittable than Huni. I think Hrgovic's chin is really good, though, so that is the one thing. He probably would take Wardley's power and give it back. But again, he's not the biggest punching heavyweight, so very, very interesting. But guys, let me know what you thought of this fight. Do you think Huni was hard done by? Did you nail your prediction? What did you make of the knockout? Like the video if you like the video. Subscribe to a guy called Henry if you're new. Channel memberships, if you want to support the channel, they're available in the description, as are my contact details. But guys, thank you so much for watching this all the way to the end. Hope you've enjoyed the event and the fight. I thought it was great. Hopefully in the future, the fights will be more competitive and you won't just see like a one-sided run from one guy and then a single shot knockout. I don't think, as I say, Wardley can continue his career like that and have any kind of longevity. But guys, thank you so much for sticking with me to the end of this video. As I always say, on to the next one.